All right. Hello, everyone. I hope you are all well. I hope you're safe and happy and healthy from wherever in the world you are. I know folks will be tuning in at various times. I know 2 p.m. on a Saturday Eastern Standard is a little difficult for some folks. I know I have a lot of folks who tune in from the other side of the world where it might be the middle of the night right now. But it's so nice to be here with you. This is going to be a really, really fun, really informative, hopefully really educational session. For those of you who don't know me, came over from Alan's channel, from Sound Speeds. My name is Brian Miller. I am a former full-time professional magician. I toured the world doing corporate and high-end event entertainment. Got very lucky with a TEDx talk that went viral in 2015, launched me into a career as a coach, consultant, speaker, author on human connection, which is now my full-time job. But I am an audio nerd. I have a formal background in audio engineering. At least I studied it when I was in college. Got Pro Tools certified, I think, back when that mattered or that was a thing, whatever that time in audio was. Pretty much the same year that the music industry actually went bankrupt and collapsed for the final time, which is how I ended up deciding to become a magician, amazingly. I see that Dominic is here. 11 a.m. over in Oregon. Wonderful. Coming in and out. Glad you're here. Bandrew, an honor, sir, to have you here. Thank you so much for being here. And yeah, so I'm a lifelong audio nerd. As you can see from some of the dark, this studio needs different lighting now that I've switched. I've switched around so many settings and so many things this year in my studio. I was switching things up until 10 minutes before jumping on this live. But regardless, I am really excited to have a guest here today, which I don't normally have on the live stream. It's something I've been wanting to do moving into 2021 is expand the educational aspects and more interviews and things like that. So my guest today is Alan Williams of Sound Speeds. Many of you know Alan. Many of you are coming over from his channel. And for those of you who don't for some reason, we'll get him to give his official introduction here in a second. But and he'll correct me if I get anything particularly wrong. But Alan's a boom mic operator, and hopefully from the background he'll nod at me here and tell me that I did get that right. Predominantly a boom microphone operator. He does a lot of different things, of course. I believe Atlanta-based in the film industry, and his channel is called Sound Speeds, and he's here to help us understand how to properly evaluate a microphone. So Alan, welcome. Hello.
Hi there. Thanks for having me. It's funny you say that you don't normally have guests. I said, well, I'm going to have to make sure I get everybody riled up and triggered about something. And it's funny. People, it's like, you don't normally have guests for a live stream and you're going to throw me on there. That's going to be fun.
I am. I'm excited about it. So maybe then you can give us a little bit of your background before we dive into how this live came about, which is just within the last 3 days. This came about very quickly and for a very specific reason. But give us a better background than I just gave you, because you work on all the movies that everybody wants to be affiliated with. It's very cool.
Well, usually I find myself now working in the world of television. Bandrew, I'm not going to listen to you because you're eating a donut and you're a pizza guy. But here's the thing. Television and movies, I like working on both. I find that television is typically a longer run, so I usually find myself living in that world. I can easily book a television show and be fine for 6 months, and it works great for me. I can work on a feature, work for 2 months, and then have off for a month. And I like to constantly work. I'm constantly doing one thing regarding sound or another. Even when I was working on Walking Dead, and I got up at 4 a.m. and I would drive an hour and a half to get to work, and I would be there for a 14 or 15-hour day, and then would drive home an hour and a half in no traffic. As soon as I get home, I would still do an episode. And that's when I started Sound Speeds. And at that point, for the first 100 episodes, I released a new episode every 3 days. You're talking about no sleep at all in that kind of a schedule. And so that was fun to begin with. You know, I'm a nutcase on that. And it's funny because I'll literally come home and start talking about sound. And there was a joke that came up on Facebook where somebody was talking about how They bring their homework with their work home with them. And I jokingly said to my wife one time, she says, "Are you listening to me?" And I said, "I don't bring my work home with me." And she said, "You always bring your work home with you." Because I never stopped talking about it. My wife is like, "Don't you ever get tired of it?" I'm like, "No, I must talk sound." When I worked with Michael Wynn of the Michael Wynn YouTube channel, for example, he was my sound mixer for a while. And one of the funny things that he recalls is that we finished on set at like 10 or 10:30. Everyone was exhausted from after doing like a 14, 15-hour day. I go home and I was so amped up. I got a couple of questions, in email. I responded. Then I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do a live stream. So I started doing a live stream. He's brain dead. He wakes up at 3 a.m. and he just mindlessly goes in and says, I'm kind of stirring around. I'm going to check my email. And he sees that I'm live. And he's like, no, he can't be live right now. It's got to be a glitch or something. He clicks and there I am, having been on for almost 2 hours, just blabbing about sound. He's like, what are you doing? We have an 8 a.m. call time. And so that gives you an idea of who I am and how I work. I started in, as a little bitty kid wanting to be a movie star, like I'm sure you can imagine all kids wanting to be. But with a face for radio, that didn't happen. And actually, I fell in with a group of people who, as we were doing video projects in the early world of it, tech wasn't something that people understood a lot about. They would just throw a camera on a tripod and it would have people's heads centered in the frame and you'd have a mile and a half of headroom. Well, what I started doing is pushing those cameras to the limits. I started pushing different aspects of it to the limits, started learning a lot. And then over time, I became more valuable behind camera. So out of high school, actually before that, I was 17 and my drama teacher had at a performing arts school, kind of like imagine the movie Fame, but in Georgia as opposed to New York. He ended up telling me, you should actually, if you want to be in the film industry, you should at least start learning some more about television and movies. And he recommended me to go to the public access channel of Atlanta. So I went in there, technically too young to do anything, but I started volunteering for shows. You're supposed to be 18 or older. And I was in there volunteering at 17. I took their certification class, which is just more about the history of public access TV and learning how to not destroy the gear, that kind of thing. And then over the course of time of volunteering, they were like, who is this young kid that just comes in here? He's extremely passionate about it. And they then offered me a job in working in master control on the weekends. So I took them up on that. And this is before E-Verify. So about a month or so after they hired me, they looked, you're 17? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, you're supposed to be 18 to work here. I'm like, does that mean I'm fired? And they're like, no, just don't say anything. So I was only about 3 or so months away from turning 18 at that point. When I graduated high school, I was hired straight out to be the right-hand man of a guy who owned a video production company. So on the weekends, I would shoot videos with him. During the week, if I wasn't at school, I was editing. I would go in on the days I wasn't working and I would edit constantly for him. I was main editor and I was a shooter. But one of the things that he taught me very early on was something that had never occurred to me before, because I'd been doing video stuff for 10 years, but my projects always looked and sounded like crap. And so one of the things he told me is he said, no, you have to actually care about sound. And I'm like, why? Yeah. He says, because if it doesn't sound good, it doesn't look good. And he showed me why. And so he taught me some of the basics about sound. This is in 1995. So he started teaching me some things. And then he trained me to be a DJ in addition to everything else the following year. And my natural ability to just speak to a crowd and how I'm not the least bit scared if you put me in front of 1,000 people. I'm just completely at home. And this is in person. I've been a speaker and people would bring me in. Are you nervous? No. Really? I'm like, yeah. I mean, I'm me. I mean, who am I going to... I am what I am. If I'm, who's going to be, if they're going to look at me and not like the way that I look or sound, something like that, I can't do anything about that. I'm still me, but I'm bringing information or I'm whatever. I'm very confident, not in myself as much as, my ability to communicate. So that's one of the things that I feel, and that passion usually drives things. And after working in the world of videography and DJing and that kind of thing for a while, I wanted to build a nonlinear editing system so that way I could do my own projects better, because this is in the late 90s. And I did that, and that took me into IT. So I worked for Arthur Anderson before Enron took him down. I worked for Earthlink in tech support where I learned customer service and stuff. Then I went to work full-time as a martial arts instructor because I was actually very active in that world at that time. and I did weapons as well. So one of the things I used was a bow staff. And so that
A
I'll come
a
back to that.
bow
A bow
staff?
staff, what Donatello, the Ninja Turtle, used,
Oh,
the
okay.
staff.
All right.
So,
Yeah, I've got four of them in
yeah.
my. No, I don't. I have no idea what that is.
Okay.
I
Well,
can visualize it though.
imagine Donatello and
Yeah.
spinning
Yeah.
the stick, that 6 foot
Yeah.
stick. I'll just
Got
put
it.
it that way.
Got it.
And after I left that company, I was a photographer, a PPA photographer for 5 years, and working for a company. I was promoted to management, so I was a trainer, not high end management. I was more of a trainer on of a team leader, a mentor type thing. And then after that, uh, the film industry in Georgia started to take off to the point where it was actually something you could make a career in. So
Mm.
one of my friends from the old public access television days that I continue to do work with actually was able to convince me to go full time into the industry, even though it was fresh with the tax incentives. I said, okay, I'll take the jump, and I did. And it took only about 6, 8 months for me to realize that everything in my past came together to make me pretty successful as a boom operator very quickly, especially because I'm usually a pretty quick study for things. So, like for example, martial arts, boom handling. I was able to use a lot of this, modify stances in the way that you hold a boom in order to balance myself when doing a walk and talk holding a boom. I was able to use a lot of the customer service abilities that I had from Arthur Anderson and Earthlink and use those directly on set in order to what police officers use as they call verbal judo in order to get what you need to on set while making everyone very happy in a diplomatic way. And so I could be successful there with getting a light cut or getting a little bit extra space or getting a light moved over, something along those lines. And then I was able to use my photography background because instantly I could tell based on the highs and the height of a camera and the size of the lens and stuff, how close I could be with the microphone, able to manage all these different aspects. And so my entire past seems to almost have been training me to do this crazy boom operator thing. And so it's worked really well for me. And I've met a lot of contacts that have been very, very helpful to me. And one of the things that really was difficult for me when I first started out is understanding the process, understanding the world of how to take sound into a professional film industry type world. And that right there was something I had very little training on. And so I learned through the School of Hard Knocks, making a lot of people mad on set and completely angering directors and DPs and stuff until I got more comfortable, until I started kind of getting my skill sets up. And then over the course of time, when I got kind of an intermediate / advanced level, I was like, I'm going to start teaching some of the basics. So that way people don't have to relearn everything that I had to learn through the School of Hard Knocks. When I became an advanced level, I started teaching intermediate stuff. When one of my friends told me you've mastered your craft, I started teaching advanced classes. And then after a while, I started teaching on sound speeds as well. Because to me, humanity, one of the reasons why we're successful as humans is because we all come together and put our collective knowledge into making things better. And to me, this is something that the film industry has been very, very closed about. And I wanted to kind of open that up. Matt Price with Sound Rolling, he did a great job of doing this and kind of leading the way in the YouTube world with regards to professional sound people. But he did more E&G type stuff. He does more E&G type stuff. But my experience being on set as a boom operator is something it's kind of you don't see a lot of boom operators online talking about things, especially being in the fight on set. So that's one of the things I'm doing.
So there's so many different things in your story that are so interesting, and there's so many different places that I could go with that. We might have to do a separate talk sometime to really dive into all of them. But the one thing I thought was so interesting is that you said all the different aspects of your life kind of all led you to this one place, which, one of my all-time favorite quotes is Steve Jobs, you can only connect the dots looking backwards, right? And what it made me reminded me of is one of my favorite books I've read in ages is, I just read this year, I think it came out last year, but it's Range by David Epstein. And he wrote this book about why generalists succeed in a specialized world. And I think people would look at you and think, wow, you are the epitome of a specialist, because you basically you're a boom operator. It's such a specific niche thing, but it was actually your breadth of so many different experiences across so many different fields and genres that led you to be able to specialize and be the go-to guy. And I think that's sorely missed in a lot of stories these days, where we have this idea that you're supposed to, if you could just do one thing from the time you were 3 and only commit to that, then you'll be successful. But it's actually, that's much more rare. The Tiger Woods stories are very rare. It's just that we hear about them because they're all over the media. It's much more likely that you'll be successful if you have a wide range of experiences. And I see Kelsey, thanks so much for being here. Kelsey was a boom operator at 19. There you go. Very little training. Is it your experience that people don't understand the value of a good boom operator, or just her experience? That's a good question.
1000%. And the simple reason is that most people are camera minded. When you think film industry, they think camera. You got to have more cameras. You got to have better cameras. I got to spend my entire money on my budget on a camera. No, you don't. What you need to do is you need to concentrate on the sound. If it doesn't sound good, it doesn't look good. And as a boom operator, that's one of the things that you are one of 3 people on the film set with the sound mixer and the sound utility. You're one of 3 people. I mean, you could argue the producers and the director do too, that care about sound. Everyone else is there for picture. So, but people also have this mentality of sound just naturally works. Why do we need to think about it? You just take a microphone, throw it over there, it's going to sound good, right? It doesn't. The thing about that is, though, a lot of people on the bigger shows, I've worked on the Marvel shows. I know how they bring out fans and they bring out all this stuff that makes things noisy. But get this, they have the money to do ADR if they need to. And so, but when you do a small project, they don't have that kind of budget.
Real
and
quick,
a lot of times,
for the folks who don't know the acronyms, ADR?
Automated dialogue replacement, where they basically take the track that we produce on set and they play it back for the actors to listen to. They usually wear a lav. They have a microphone pointed at them that usually they try to balance or match, rather, the microphone that they're speaking into in a controlled environment, the recording studio, and they try to match that microphone to what was used on set. And then they have the actors look at their performance and try to recapture that audio-wise, kind of like animation. And so that they can slip it in and magically, there's your term, slip it in there so that way it works well in the show. But the thing is, though, they prefer to use the production audio track because that's the real sound. Very few actors I know like doing ADR. One of the ones I worked with, Samuel L. Jackson, he actually likes doing ADR. He's one of the few that I've run into that does. And I asked him why. He said, because I don't know what take the director is going to use, and I want the sound that he says, I want myself to sound like I want myself to sound in the movie. When he sees himself on screen, he knows that if he did ADR for that, it's him making it sound the way he wants it to match that performance. I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah.
But not everybody is
awesome.
that way. Not everybody is that way. So the value of a good boom operator, absolutely. You have to understand the set. You have to understand how to get a microphone into the right place. If an actor tips their head down, my microphone is right here. If I tip my head down, I go off axis. And suddenly my sound sounds totally different just because I angled my head 30 degrees. If I turn off axis this way, same exact thing. You have to understand how body language works, how microphones pick up, the acoustics of rooms. You have to understand all these different things if you want to be one of the top people in your craft, to really understand what it takes to get a good, consistent track that post can use effectively.
Right. So now to turn it a little bit onto kind of, turn the corner into what we're here to talk about today, because all the stuff you're talking about is awesome if we've got somebody listening who wants to be a professional boom operator. But most of the folks watching this, listening to this, are just trying to get the best audio they can for their YouTube videos, for their LinkedIn videos. I have a lot of folks who follow me because they're in HR marketing for a corporation and they need to produce videos for social media that they've been told to do. And they're just trying to really nail their audio. They can't spend a fortune. They don't have time to, go to school for it or to spend, 15, 20 years in an industry to learn it. And I feel like it's the problem is, and I say this all the time, like you said, people are video minded. And so if you know nothing about video, you can still see that it's wrong. The average person who knows nothing about video will take a video themselves and go, something's wrong. And they'll go, the colors look weird. And then they'll Google, why do my colors look weird? But when something's wrong with their audio, they don't even know what to Google. They don't know what terms to use to describe it. They don't even know what they're listening for. And often, actually, one of the biggest problems, and I talk about this in my courses, is if you're not monitoring properly, you don't even know, you can't even tell what's wrong. And that's a whole other issue. But we wanted to talk today about how to properly evaluate a microphone. So kind of from two different angles here, how to evaluate a mic before you buy it, kind of how to decide what mic to buy, but also once you've got it and you're in a return window, right, where you can return it, how to decide if this really is the mic for you. And what prompted this was a video that Caleb at DSLR Video Shooter just put up a few days ago. Now, we're both going to go out of our way to explain just how much we love Caleb and his channel. This is 100% not a let's bash on Caleb. I've been following Caleb's channel for years. I love his channel. I've learned so much.
He does a lot of great videos. He does a lot of great videos if they're video-minded.
Yeah, they're video-minded.
In fairness, his video about testing microphones, it looked great.
Yeah,
it sounded fine for video,
and it looked great. And he always
testing.
Yeah, but the testing was off, right? And so here's what we wanted to do. I saw the video and I saw 50,000 people had watched it, and I'm scrolling and I'm watching it going, listen, I'm an audio enthusiast. I was formally trained, but a long time ago. I'm not an audio expert, but I know enough. And I'm watching it going, nothing about these tests is being done right. There's nothing that you could actually learn from the tests that he's doing apart from an entertaining video. But I thought, am I the only crazy person here? So I'm scrolling the comments, and it was starting to look like I was the only crazy person there until I saw your comment.
That's why I commented, because it was brilliant, great, thank you so much for this email or this video. It tells me so much. I'm like, it doesn't. Yeah. And people that know me will tell you that I can be, I don't want to say a hothead, but I will get amped up real quickly if I see some misinformation. So I will just, just have to type this thing out. So
right. And Bandrew, we obviously agree. Caleb is amazing, and so it's really clear that we're not bashing. But the point of this is that when I reached out to Alan and said, listen, I saw your comment, and that gave me some validation. I wasn't being crazy or extra nitpicky, and you had basically said something like, everything's wrong but the thumbnail, which was the thumbnail was, oh, by the way, I have the thumbnail here because it's just so I have to bring this up real quick. Let's hang on. Where's my button? There it is. Hang on. There.
It had to have taken a lot out of him to do that video. Look, 1 month, 3 weeks, 2 weeks.
Every time I scroll over it starts auto playing. Anyway, there it is. So the point is, it was really just a matter of, we reached out and my first thought, and it sounds like was your first thought as well, which is 50,000 people just watched this, and they're people who want to improve their audio. And because basically all of the testing was not helpful and I don't want to say it was useless, but it wasn't helpful in determining what a good microphone is or how to choose the right mic for you, your project, your voice, your situation, your environment. But he came to the right conclusion, and I think it was by accident or by bias. I think he wanted that mic before he did the testing.
Because you saw at the very end, he said, that's the microphone I've been using this entire video.
Right. And
right
so
there, I was like, okay, so you watched the end of the movie and then you went back and decided to watch the rest of it. Gotcha.
Exactly. And so my big concern was that people would realize that he really did get the conclusion right, but he got the conclusion right for the wrong reasons. And that's almost worse than getting the wrong conclusion.
Well, that's one of the reasons why they want you to show your work in math class. You can say, prove to me that if you divide, 2 by 3, that it's 0.6666. You could say, show your work. It's like, okay, well, how do I show my work to show that I didn't use a calculator? That's one of the things, is showing your work. And to be fair, you don't have a channel that has 500,000 subscribers if you produce garbage content.
Right.
Fair enough. But the thing is, though, DSLR shooter, he's a DSLR shooter. And we are not by any means all-knowing gurus here on YouTube. I'm certainly, I may have had a camera background. Doesn't mean that, look at me. I have a blown out spot on my forehead right now. And no matter what I did with the webcam procs, I could not get that thing to go away. Now I could use my shock mount here. Actually, my Stedman right there, I took out some of it by using it like a single. That helped a little bit. So it's ridiculous using a Stedman $100 pop filter for that, but hey, it worked. But but my point here is that his channel is basically for video people. But he then did a video where he talked about sound, and through no fault of his, just because audio is one of those very weird things that is based on experience. It's based on your ears, based on the way you interact with it. And he was very clear. He said, this testing works for me. I'm doing this because I'm finding this to be important. But the thing I looked at is I looked at and I cringed at his environment. I said, everything is hard. The table in front of him is hard. The walls are hard. I was like, and he's testing his microphones there. And he didn't even
Yeah.
talk about his method. So, I mean, there's no, and it's one of those things of if you don't know something, you don't know that you don't know what you should be doing.
Right.
So,
So
you
what?
know,
Let's start with this then. So there were three tests that he did. He called them the sensitivity test, the rejection test, and the sound quality test. And the first thing he did was he showed us a photo, and I meant to have this ready and pulled up. So I'm gonna talk. I'm gonna let you start talking about it, and then I'll get the photo and put it on the screen. But he showed us his controlled environment with sound blankets first, which like a good scientist would, showing you what the testing environment was going to be. So why don't you, I'm going to solo you so you can talk a little bit about what a controlled environment would be, or if you don't have a controlled environment, maybe what you should be doing if you're testing a mic for yourself, and I'll find the that photo.
okay, just so it's been said real quick, if you are not familiar with me and my channel, I have various different videos talking about some of the elements I'm going to be discussing right now. There's a difference between soundproofing and sound absorbing. Soundproofing is hard, dense materials that you use to prevent sound from traveling through a surface. If I'm in a room that has 10-foot wide concrete walls, that room is going to be completely soundproof if I'm standing in the middle of that, provided I can breathe. I have so many things that are not going to be getting into that room. It is going to be completely soundproof. However, if I speak, you're going to hear my voice echo off of all of those walls because there's no sound absorbent material. But different frequencies absorb sound differently. Higher pitched frequencies, like let me put this in perspective for you. A sound wave that is 20 hertz, which our human hearing is about 20 to 20,000 hertz, right? 20 hertz, a sound wave is approximately 17.15 meters long. That's about 56 feet. So one sound wave that goes through a crest and then a trough is 56 feet long. And then if you were to take that then, and the reason why is because, and it's very easy to calculate, sound travels at about 1,125 feet per second or 343 meters per second, okay? If that is the distance that sound travels in 1 second, and there are 20 hertz, 20 of those cycles happening per second, do the math. Take 343 divided by 20, or 1,125 feet, and divide that by 20. Now, before I get overly technical in all this stuff, real quick, if you were to do the same thing and have 20,000 hertz at that point, then you are suddenly shrinking that, dividing that into 1,000 little segments. So now it's all of a sudden about 17.15 millimeters long instead. So if that's the case, I need you, it's one of those things I need you to think about this for a second. Sound is going to travel through absorbent materials differently at the lower frequencies and the higher frequencies. If you walk up on a nightclub, you hear like that. You don't hear the highs and mids quite as well, do you? The reason why is because the lower frequencies travel through them with more energy than the higher pitch sounds do. So the higher pitch sounds are going to reflect easier off of those dense, hard, soundproof walls. But the lower frequencies are going to vibrate those walls and radiate through. So if you think about that, the things that you need to keep in mind is that dense material is going to sound proof and prevent sound from going through, but sound absorbent material works very similar as well, where sound that goes through a soft surface, it's going to quickly break up the higher pitched sounds and not so much the lower pitched sounds. So using the little sound blankets that he was using is like this, that little bitty thing right there. That to me, I looked at that and I shook my head and I said, first of all, there's a whole bunch of things wrong with this. Number one is using sound blankets in this kind of environment. Those things are only going to be able to get rid of a lot of the higher frequencies. It's not going to do anything for the lower frequencies. If you look at the corner of the room up at the top, you couldn't even see what was being done up there. There's no bass traps. There's nothing in particular. You can't even see the floor. It could be no carpet on the floor also. And he's using a test speaker. First of all, that's not a coaxial test speaker like what you would use, a studio coaxial test speaker. And you put that 1 meter away. That's the way that manufacturers and the Audio Engineering Society and everybody tests microphones, unless you're Earthworks. Earthworks does things more realistically, in my opinion. Yeah, they actually test at 1 meter, about 1 foot away, because they know that when you test and you use a microphone, rather, you're not going to be speaking a meter away from that thing. So most manufacturers test at a distance of 1 meter away, and I find it to be almost pointless, a lot of the tests that they do, because it does not tell you how it really sounds in the real world when you get up on that thing. And the way he's doing this with his little test speaker, first of all, it's not full range, it's not coaxial, it's a Bluetooth. There are things right there that just looking at the picture, I'm like, what are you doing?
Let's just double down just for a second before we even get into all the 3 tests themselves on the fact that a Bluetooth speaker that's this big was being used for this test. I mean, for a few things, a speaker that big physically can't produce a full range of frequencies.
Sonically, you can't.
It's probably what, 150 hertz, 200 hertz roll off on that thing? I mean, maybe 100 hertz with modern tech.
It probably is rated for like 50 up to 18,000 or 20,000, but you know that you're not going to be able to get great response out of those lower frequencies. Right. Just because it can put them out there into the world doesn't mean that they're doing it evenly and consistently.
Right.
And a coaxial test speaker, one of the things that they do when they test is they constantly run pink noise through them, so that way all the diaphragm and the whole thing stays warm. So that way, as soon as they kill the pink noise and put the test tone through it, that way it is properly warmed up to it. This thing right here, connecting it up via Bluetooth and then just saying, okay, well, this is not a control. This is nothing. How does this sound? This is one of the reasons why I don't like doing headphone reviews and don't do them, because it's so difficult to share an experience. I cannot say, oh, let me listen to how your headphones sound and have you sonically through YouTube match the way that my headphones sound to the ones that you're listening to. But that speaker is very similar too. That speaker is designed for people to kind of casually listen or whatever. It's not designed for testing microphones. So that is completely, that's a wrong tool. And the way he's doing everything is just, like I said, he doesn't know what he doesn't know.
Yeah, and so is there, so let's start with the sensitivity test. And so we've already established the problem is simply the environment and the test conditions are going to make all of these tests basically not helpful, mostly because of the inconsistencies between the takes and there's not the full range. There's the issue with a Bluetooth speaker. Bluetooth itself is like a 12-to-1 compression ratio on average, right? Something like that in terms of the data compression, or at least it was at the beginning of Bluetooth. Maybe it's better now, but so there's all kinds of issues there. So what can we? Oh, by the way, Bandrew just said what I was about to say. I have been sent a couple of headphones by a company, an audio company I collaborate with, and I keep trying to figure out how to do a review / demonstration of headphones. I'm like, how do I could say I'm faking with the EQ as best as I can explain to you what I'm hearing, but how helpful is that?
Well, you know what? It's funny, because when I first started this channel, I thought, I could review pretty much anything. And then I talked to AudioTechnica, and they sent me a pair of a pair of the AT875R headphones, because I'd heard them before. I've seen sound mixers use them. I knew that the stuff, the microphones or the headphones I use on set are going to be different than what you use in editing in studio. So when I reached out to them, they were more than happy to send me a pair. And then I was like, well, how do I review this? And then I was like, it's going to be more difficult than I thought. So if you want a review of it, it's basically me saying, okay, I'm going to put some sounds through this thing. I'm going to listen to it and tell you the first thoughts that come to my mind. Yeah. It's ridiculous. It's because I'm trying to think what sounds I'm thinking. Okay, but this sounds deep. It sounds rich. It sounds, and then I was like, okay, the voice sounds very present. It's, and all I could think of is just the way, trying to convey an experience. It means you have to add what? You have to add either emotion to it. You have to add some sort of a personality to it. And so I was like, okay, how does this thing make me feel? How does this make me, and that's all I could think to do, aside from talking about the technical. And let the truth be known, if you, Bandrew's in here, if you watch a lot of my reviews, you don't see me talk a whole lot about specs. You'll see me
Yeah.
maybe pinpoint a couple of them if there's something worth mentioning, but most of the time I say, here are the specs, and I throw them up on the screen while I blab about something else. Because specs to me are not interesting. If you look at many specs, they're the same. Sensitivity of -32 decibels Pascal. You see all that. You see the same typical frequency response that looks pretty much flat, then has a little bit of a presence boost. It almost looks the exact same because of how they measure it. It looks almost the exact same when you look at the polar patterns. Okay, how is this stuff interesting? How does this tell me anything? It's the same stuff that almost is across the board the same because of the way they test them.
I find
However,
myself,
that if you get up on a microphone or you use that microphone, that's going to tell you how the thing should be used. That's going to tell you how it sounds. You got to listen to it. You can't go and watch a review and expect it to tell you everything you want. You have to actually experience. Now, what you can see in a review is the gist of how it sounds. You can see based on specs, based on what it's designed for, based on features, you can see certain things. And based on what you see and hear in those reviews, that should tell you if you were interested in testing it or trying it for yourself.
And to the point that Bandrew makes a lot, which is my favorite point he makes on his on Podcastage all the time, which is
he's a dope.
What is it?
He says, "I'm a dope." Is that what you're meaning?
No, that wasn't what I was going to say, but you could say that. What I was going to say is, to that point, if you just listen to one reviewer review a microphone, you really have no idea. But my voice is very, very different than Bandrew's voice, is different than your voice, is different than Curtis, is different than Delgadio's. I don't know what is that even. But
he can talk into a toothbrush. It sounds better than me.
Right. I have this unusual voice where I have to keep reminding my viewers on my reviews that I have a very deep voice, but I have a very, very 550 hertz, 600 hertz nasal presence in my voice well, you might not hear as much because I cut that out on a board before it hits, right? But so I have that when I do my reviews. Obviously, Bandrew's got a more nasal forward voice, and Curtis has a different. So if you watch, though, reviews from lots of different reviewers on the same mic, you'll get a better sense of how it might sound to you. But let's then let me ask you the question then. He did a sensitivity test, Caleb. He did a rejection test, and he did a sound quality test. The sound quality test I thought was the most useful, if only because it was subjective. And it had to be,
But even then, he's playing sound through that little Bluetooth speaker in that environment.
It was a strange choice.
The thing about it is, polar pattern wise, you have a speaker, you have the microphone right there. Okay? You should look at put up the comment that Bandrew made right before that one. There you go. Bandrew always says, I'm a dope. I'm just a guy that loves this stuff. The thing is, though, I've told Bandrew so many times, he has heard so many things, he's actually become an expert. And let the truth be known, he's actually become what I believe to be a pro at microphone reviews. I've told him that, and he says, I'm a dope still. I still feel like a dope. I'm constantly learning. I'm like, we're all constantly learning. Okay, let me get back on topic here. You have a speaker here, you have a microphone here. There's a lot of different aspects to it. Polar pattern comes into play a little bit. And when he did the rejection test, I'm like, all right, look, he has cardioid against supercardioid against interference tubes. And then he didn't even put the null area of most of the patterns that he had there. Supercardioids is not down exactly polar opposite to the microphone. It is about 135, between, if it's a hyper or super, it's between about 120 and about 145 or so degrees off axis to that microphone. And that's what the off axis lobe was for most of the microphones he was testing. And when he turned the speaker exactly around backwards, I'm like, so you're picking up the rear lobe there. How is that? And then he's like, I'm going to turn it sideways. I'm like, your cardioid pattern is not going to be off axis then. It's going to be detail-wise, it's going to be off axis, so you're going to be lacking that. You're going to be very much off axis with regard to your supercardioid. How is this a valid test? I looked at that thing and I was like almost shaking there. I got a minute into this video and I started typing. I hit pause and started typing. And then I watched about 30 more seconds going, nope. And I started typing again. And so I found myself constantly watching this thing saying, if anybody was at their house trying to do the same kind of tests, you're not going to get any kind of decent results if you're doing this. That's one of the reasons why we said at the beginning, I'm surprised he came up with the results he did. And it's very much like when I saw this and I saw the results he did and the testing, I couldn't help it in my mind say he's trying to justify him getting there. Because
Yeah.
because I
Yeah.
was not happy with a lot of the test. And even when he did the sound quality test, I'm like, you put that microphone over that microphone? Are you kidding me? It
Yeah.
may be because of that environment. It may have been because of the test speaker and because of that environment, but that's not the way a voice performs. That's not the way that that a real world room would actually sound on a voice.
I do a series that I actually should be doing more of on my channel, which is audio critiques. I have subscribers email me samples that they're having trouble with, and pretty much in real time. I don't do it live, but I do it pretty much in real time. I listen for the first time while I'm on camera, and then I just go through what I would change, or I fix it as if I had to fix it, and then based on that say, here's what you should change about your recording environment so you don't have to do these things. And one of the things that happens all the time is people with an SM58, which I recommend constantly, just like, oh, you want a pro-grade microphone that you can be done with forever and never think about your mic again? For a YouTube, if you're talking about podcasters,
There are
people who want to
better
be up
ones,
close.
but
What?
yes, okay. I said there are better ones, but
Okay, and sure, right? Of course there
in
are,
fairness, right?
but often I'll say an SM58, and I had so many people that have SM58s that reach in, and so many of them, I listen to it and it sounds so boomy and so crazy, and I go, can you send me a photo of where you're recording? And almost every time, well, I'm trying to eliminate my room. My room is echoey, so I'm in the corner. All right, so I've got so I've got the mic. This is the corner of my room, and the mic is here. And I got all those Amazon tiles, the foam tiles, 24 tiles for $1, and I put them all right here. And I'm looking at going, okay, so those things are this thin, so you're sucking up all high range, right? So like the only thing you're sucking up is high range, and you're in the corner where all the bass built up to begin with. And now you sucked up any high range that was left, so it's even bassier. And then you're this close to an SM58, which is kind of a boomy mic to begin with. And that it's the opposite of what you would. Audio is often the opposite of what people would think. And one of the light bulb moments for me was when I did an interview with the folks at GA Acoustics on my channel last year. When they built out this room for me. They designed this room. And I did an interview, and the best tip, the light bulb moment for me was you'd think this would be obvious, but until somebody says it, it's not obvious. He said, remember where the hot side of the mic is. The hot side's here. You got to worry a lot more about what's coming this way than you got to worry about what's directly behind it, right? If you're worried about what's behind it, you only have to worry to the extent it's bouncing off and coming back this way again, or at anywhere that's roughly on axis. And so a lot of times you got to worry a lot more about treating what's behind you and worried about, okay, go ahead, please.
I'm going to throw something out there.
Please.
Here's something I say, I teach constantly. If you think about the frequencies of your voice, the mids, the highs, the lows, I'm very directional with my mids and highs. Acoustically, if you're talking about the way sound naturally works, if you get below 50 hertz, it's omnidirectional. The closer you get to 50 hertz, it's going to be closer to omnidirectional. Your bass frequencies come from your chest cavity, which radiates 360, because the front of your chest, the back, your back, it all radiates the same way. If I'm talking about the detail, the mids and highs, the way I usually say it is your vocal folds, your vocal cords start to vibrate. And then it comes up through your throat, and it's shaped by your mouth and shaped by the resonance of your head and your mouth and everything that entails. But if you think about it, they're only vibrating at a certain speed. And that's pretty much the same with all people. So what you're creating is basically a low end rumble. It's how you shape those words that kind of creates an outline around each word. And the mids and highs are directional. They go in one direction for the most part. The bass frequencies go in all directions. So if you have a microphone that is pointed at you right in the face right here, the mids and highs are driven straight into the microphone, not so much behind you. If I turned around and faced the other direction, you're going to hear mainly the low end of the microphone coming back in, and you're going to hear the low end of my voice coming into the microphone. You're not going to hear the mids and highs as much. But the same thing happens based on the bass cavity right here coming off the table, bouncing off of the back wall. That's one of the reasons why it's all amplified at that point. It's not just the bass frequencies going into the microphone here. It's bouncing off of this wall and going back into the microphone, bouncing off of that wall, going back into the microphone, bouncing off the table in front of me, going into the microphone. It's all reinforced, not so much with the mids and highs. But if I put walls directly behind the microphone and then I spoke into that, then it's going to be bouncing off of those walls and then straight back into the back of the microphone. And at that point, you'll hear them more. You'll start to hear more presence. You'll start to hear that. But most of the time, people don't have a treated environment. And so what you end up having is the same thing as when you're in a big conference room. Tell me, when you're in a big conference room and there's 300, let's just say, you're in a conference center for a Comic-Con type event, and you have 500 to 1,000 people in a room. If you were to decide to tell me what the frequencies and the noise floor of that room, the frequencies of that room are going to be what? Mainly low end. It's a low end rumble. It's a low end wash. What they would refer to in the stage audio world, stage wash. It's low end rumble. That's all it is. And the reason why is because you have a bunch of people talking in there, and the bass in their voice scatters in all directions. Then someone else next to them does the same thing, the next thing, next, and the mids and highs are being absorbed by a bunch of the bodies, and they're facing away from you in different directions too. So only the voices that can manage to get through bodies to you, you're going to hear. But most of it is going to be low-end rumble coming from everybody's bass cavity, reflecting sound into the world and off of every single wall around them. That's why. And so when you talk about one person speaking inside of a room that's all hard walls, all that happens is it picks up all that low end and it comes right back in there. About 2 months ago or so, I did a video called "What one trick is you need to know for EQing if you're a beginner," or something along those lines. And then I'm gonna blow it for you here. The spoiler is, and I even say to my audience, I say, now here's the thing: if you're watching this video, what one thing does a beginner need to know about EQ? I said, here's what you need to know: don't. Because it's not the problem is not your microphone picking up bad things. It's your environment that's not treated. It's your environment that's wrong. It's not your microphone. Your microphone is picking up what you're giving it.
Okay, right. I'm so glad you just said that. My followers, my subscribers here, my little community that are watching this have heard me say this on a broken record over and over again. Microphones are designed to pick up sound. If your room sounds like something, they're going to pick it up. And often, I actually made a video where I said, often don't buy a better microphone. Often a better microphone will make your audio worse because it'll more accurately represent the crappy room you're in.
Exactly. And that's straight up and that's straight up the way it is. Mike Delgadio said on his channel at one point, if you have a budget, spend 80% of that on sound reinforcement, making your room sound good, and the last 20% on the actual tech and gear behind it. And that is straight up accurate. Because if your environment does not tame the stuff that and control the sound that's inside of it, the microphone's just going to pick it up. And people are like, I'm going to buy the best possible microphone I can. I'm going to buy the Sennheiser MKH416 because I saw it in Caleb's video. But the thing is, though, you put that in a room that's nothing but hard walls and reflections and everything, it's still going to sound very reflective. It's still going to sound very boomy. You're going to be able to hear the quality of that microphone, sure. But you're not going to be able to, you're going to say, man, it doesn't sound as good as I'd like it to. Why is that?
It'd be the best sounding version of a crappy sounding room.
Exactly. You're going to hear the room great. And in that case, you might have better results with a microphone that's just barely out of the frame if it is a cardioid, small diaphragm microphone that doesn't pick up the room nearly as much as a shotgun would. Because you got to keep in mind, a shotgun microphone, if it's pointed at you, it's not just hearing your voice. It's picking up everything behind you. Because if you think about a microphone, it's the sum of all frequencies that are coming in from all directions, shaped by that polar pattern. So if you have a microphone pointed right at you, and that microphone is mainly concentrating on the voice that's coming out, but it's not just picking that up. It's picking your reflections off of the walls around you, and it's hearing behind you. If it's a shotgun microphone, it's listening beyond you to pick up the wall behind you as well. Or if you're sitting at a table and you have it square straight overhead, you're picking the reflections off of the table. So if people use a shotgun microphone on a table, whenever I have to use one of those on set, I don't have someone sitting here at a table and go straight overhead like you always think a boom operator to do. I always angle hard off of that table. And if their head is here, I will try to angle more this way so that I'm using that pattern and angling it. So that way The off axis lobe is cued more toward that table. So I reduce the pick back up off of the table.
And you
Those
know what?
are little things about it.
I can give a very quick
Thank you, Adam.
example of that right now. So, Adam, I love this, and in just a second, we have so many really interesting comments and questions. I want to spend the last 5 or 10 minutes on some of those because I think that'll be really useful. But so obviously, right now I'm on a large diaphragm condenser mic, very very close to it, and all of that jazz. And I'm also in a fully treated home studio. Now, when I say fully treated, I mean I'm not in a sound booth. I'm in a studio that's designed to be used and on camera, so it's not 100%, wall to wall. Of course, It's been designed to be optimized for video and for podcasting and that sort of thing. But I have the AudioTechnica AT875R, which I've talked about on my channel. Most people are familiar with. $170, budget-friendly XLR shotgun mic. It's right here. I have a hard desk that's right here. You're now hearing me in the exact same position. It's only 10 inches away from me, which is further than it actually needs to be.
Put your finger out there and touch the microphone so we can see spatially. See,
right here.
Yeah, that's not very far.
Here. No, it's not far. And it's a little bit more roomy because it's a little bit further away. It's a shotgun mic. It's not, it's not the cardioid mic. It's got the off axis is, I think you're right. I think this one said 135 because I helped Adam actually, who I just had the comment on screen, set up for his live streams where he has a much wider shot. He's a puppet builder and has a whole workshop. And
excellent.
He has a fan during the summers, an air conditioner that's really loud. And so I remember setting it up for him. And I remember him asking me, why aren't you pointing it directly away from the fan? And I remember saying, no, I need to point it slightly off this, because I was paying attention to where the off axis was, trying to figure out how to most isolate the fan away from him. So anyway,
they use in the Muppet world. I have friends that work on what was it? The Dark Crystal that was recently released on Netflix or someplace. I know this time they did that show, and I've had friends that have worked on the Muppet movies and stuff like that. What they usually use is headset mics because, first of all, there's a law that comes around here. They can put wind protection on that, and so they can get loud or whatever, and then they can EQ each person's. They can EQ each person to sound more like their character and to notch out any of the background noise. But that way, it turns along with their head when they put the puppet up and they dance it this way and that way. That way, it's a microphone that's right here. Since you don't have to lav up or mic a puppet, you put it on the person that's below. So
and that's exactly what he does when he's doing, and that's exactly what Adam does when they're actually filming. When he's using his live stream to do tutorials and things, he uses a different. Although I think now he actually use a headset. And here we go. He just said we have a bunch of those puppeteers on our. Oh, he's talking about. I think he's talking to somebody else right now. Anyway, the point is. There's a whole bunch of comments, so let's come back up here. First, a few just straightforward comments. Here's Ian, says the SM58's too boomy. Here's Alex, who loves his. So there you go.
Well, the thing to understand about an SM58...
I just got to ask Bandrew what he meant by this. Just Bandrew, I don't know if I should be taking it as a compliment or not.
No. It's because as you were talking, you broke up a little bit. So
did I?
You remember Max Headroom where that's what you were doing to me also.
Oh, no kidding.
It was
weird. I'm hardwired in.
Yeah, I still understood what you were saying. The internet gods were not working in your favor.
That's too bad. I'm hardwired in through. I had my house completely wired through with Ethernet this year to continue my career.
You're better virtually than I am because I'm still using wireless on the opposite end of the house as our internet router. So I've installed a mesh system here, and I
thought he was telling me that my audio was that I was maxing out my headroom and clipping or something, and I was like, well, that's a terrible thing for me to be doing on an audio live stream.
No.
In any regard, Ian also says that you break the verbal speed limit, so you need a faster mic, and a fast lens, and a fast internet, and everything. A few specific comments, questions, and I'll let you decide where you want to take this.
Take it. I have another hour and a half before I have something to have to do.
I'm not sure if my crying 3-month-old in the background has another hour and a half, but we'll see. My wife's got him. Don't worry.
Okay.
He's not on his own.
You know, you're talking to a father of three. I'm like, oh, don't leave. You know, let's end this thing now and you go take care of the little
No,
guy.
no, she's got
Okay.
him, but I
Okay.
promised
Good.
her because I'm doing this on my weekend, just like you're doing it on your weekend, that I would
Yes.
only take a little bit. I said this is important. Okay, a few things. Ian had asked a question a while ago. Identifying problem frequencies. This is something I work people through on my channel a lot. And I work them through in my courses as well. With the standard technique of using an
Mhm.
EQ sweep, so you start to understand how it matters. So there's one question. I'll let you decide where you want to take this. And then there was I saw maybe you take that for a second while I find there was a few
I'm
other really
sorry.
good.
I'm being able to identify problem frequencies with sound is very difficult. I'm never sure which frequencies need cut or boosting in whatever room I'm using. That's I don't there's not really a question.
I think the
But here's
question is, how do I figure out where to cut or boost frequencies? And I think Ian's talking about post-production because I would imagine mostly talking about I've recorded a video and
mhm.
now I need
Here,
to edit the
here's a
audio.
great place to start. What I always tell people is that, and I even did a video where I talked about this recently. If you can find, I should grab the card real quick and show you. There is, if you look on Google, vocal, what is it? Vocal EQ cheat sheet. It will show you a great diagram, and there's various different ones out there that show you as a general example of how different sounds are matching different frequencies. Where's boominess in EQ? Where's presence? Where's all these different, and that will at least tell you if you want to add a little clarity, you want to remove some nasal, you if you have a lisp, how to make it so, I mean, some people online will tell you if you have a lisp, oh, what you need to do is cut 800 hertz. You do that and you're basically removing clarity and therefore making people sound more lispy. So you're going to basically enhance the lisp. And so there's a lot of misinformation about that. Start with something like the vocal EQ cheat sheet and then looking at that and then play with an audio sample because everybody's voice is different. My voice is definitely higher than Brian's is. So my frequencies would probably be a little bit higher, more higher than his would be when you're trying to adjust things. It's going to be along the same kind of lines. If 800 hertz doesn't get it, maybe 850 would if you try a notch filter. And the big trick to try if you're going to try to EQ something is boost it. Set it to boost around 10 to 20
Yep.
dB in a very narrow notch, very, very narrow bandwidth. And then once you boost that, you can hear when it starts to sound really bad, the frequencies that you're really not happy with, then you found the right frequencies. Then you've dialed in on those. Then start cutting them and playing with them. But don't start EQing to try to compensate for bad room acoustics.
Right.
And you have a room that you shoot in that you've jokingly talked about on your channel for 3 years about how bad the acoustics are, and you use that as a reference to show you how a real world person would sound in a room. And I love that
Right.
about your channel because
Yeah.
he goes into different places too. But that room when he's sitting in his chair, it is terrible, and he tells you all the time that it's terrible. But one of the things that Ian also does is he talks to you about little things and little tricks and little and what he does in order to get rid of things. But in for the general person that's trying to podcast, do recordings in a home studio, something along those lines, you got to treat the environment too. So that way, if you clap, it doesn't just go shh
Yeah.
and echo and reverb throughout the room. You want it
Yeah.
to fall relatively dead fairly quickly. And if you can do
Exactly.
that, you're going to be able to control your sound more. So that way you can say, this is what I really need to EQ. So many people will try adjusting with EQ and correcting a bad room.
Yeah.
But that is completely lazy and that's not what you need to be doing because you're going to be
Right.
exacerbating the problem as opposed to fixing it.
Right. Exactly. That's great. Thank you. That was really, really thorough and really, really, really good. So Kelsey kind of back in, loving the conversation. 416 is horrible. She does documentary, run and gun, does brilliant documentary work. I think you'd really enjoy her work. So there you go. And she was following up on that. What would your thought process be about getting the best audio when you can't control the environment and you're keeping microphones
Oh,
out
that's
of
a great
frame?
question.
I hate lavs in general. I used lavs on my YouTube channel on my main channel for the first couple of years because they were easy. And now when I go back and listen to it, because I was so focused on I don't know how to do video, I just threw a lav mic on myself and focused. And now I listen and I'm like, oh, I hate the sound of lav mics.
But you know what? They're a necessary evil and they are a tool that you have to use sometimes. And lavs
Yeah,
are quite often used in noisy environments, even in the world of film, and even
yeah.
in the world that I do. And I'll be out there killing it with a boom. And the mixer's like, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to use the lav on this. And I'm like, why? And they're like, because the noise floor is too high. And sometimes that's just what you got to do as a necessary evil. Now, what I will usually do with the microphone is I will identify the trouble noises. If it is a higher pitched noise coming from the whistling of an air conditioner or an air handler or something like that, and I'm going to try to cue away from that, I'm still going to get the rumble from the AC, but I'm at least going to try to take it because that can easily be notched out. That can easily be rolled off in post. But the
Yeah,
higher pitched stuff is in the fundamental vocal frequencies. It's in the vocal frequencies and how you shape your words. Those are the things I'm going to try to reduce with the access to the microphone. So I will try to identify where that is. If I'm doing a walk and talk with somebody, I'm going to try to do the very best I possibly can to keep, I got to, first of all, keep the person on axis. You can't
yeah,
just decide to go off axis to avoid a sound. You can't do that. You got to keep that. But there are different things that you need that you can also potentially do. If you do ENG sound, then I'm sure you know that you can sometimes underboom. I've used bodies in a baffle. I did that on Stranger Things. When we had, if there was a sequence in episode 207, I did season 2. There was a sequence between 11 and 8, and they were standing outside. This is when they do the whole train sequence, if you recall, if you watch the show.
I did. Yeah,
And
all
11
of it.
pull, I don't want to, spoiler alert, but 11 uses her powers and pulls a train in there. But when they're talking out there, there was construction on the other side of those train tracks, not construction. There was people moving around and doing a whole bunch of things in that yard right across from us. It was driving me completely crazy. So instead of me floating a microphone in the middle of the huge big parking lot we were shooting in and having it pick up all the sounds, what I did is because the ladies had their backs, they were like a 3/4 position away from that. I underboomed, used their bodies as a baffle to block out those sounds a little bit. I was able to attenuate it a little bit, and we used it in the show. And that was
That's
one of the little
awesome.
tricks that I used.
That's
So
awesome.
there's things you can do like that, but you may say if you point upward, you're pointing right at the air conditioning event. That's a big culprit.
Yeah,
So at that point, what I would do is I would identify the area. I would go in there while they're setting up, listen, cue the microphone around, and say that's the best angle for the microphone to be at, and it's still pointed at the person I need it to be at. If you are doing a walk and talk, for example, footsteps are going to be a bad killer. Instead of angling straight overhead and square straight down like a lot of people do, and you're going to hear the elephant stampeding parade of all the
yeah,
crew walking backwards with everybody, it sounds terrible. Instead of doing that, cue the microphone off of the feet and angle it more forward. So that way, if people are walking this way, you have the microphone rejecting out the feet more so than the mouth. You're on the edge of the pattern, but you're still within the sweet spot of the pattern. So you do
hmm
that. And then if you need to cue off of an air conditioner because you keep going underneath those vents up above this way, you can easily cue certain ways as needed to to get rid of those trouble sounds. So what
yeah,
you need to do is walk the area if you have the option. If not, do it on the fly real quickly by adapting and listening. And don't be afraid if you're doing ENG work or something like that live, you might have to cue the microphone back and forth real quick to find the best angle. You may end up having to just resort to the lavs. But the big
yeah,
thing is listen. You got to
yeah,
constantly listen to hear what your environment sounds like. If something starts to sound bad, identify what that is probably related to. If it's starting to sound too reflective or too bassy, you know you're probably cued right at a table. And even if your microphone is square because it was set up that way, and then someone sits down, you're like, "Yikes! I'm getting a lot of play off that table." Instead of just saying, "Well, I'm going to have to destroy my audio for a second by angling that microphone out," instead of doing that, what you can do is look at this, lower the end of your boom pole and cue it outwards a little bit. So instead of
hmm
holding it overhead, if that's what you were doing before, angle it lower and you're going to cue it outwards. Another thing you can do is twist the microphone so that instead of being square up ahead like this, you can come in at a little bit more of an angle. That's going to still be on access to their mouth, but it's going to be off of the table a little bit. Now keep
yeah,
in mind also the microphone is hearing the other side of someone. It's hearing and playing off of the person's face too. If I have a microphone pointed right at my face, my voice is coming out and it's not hearing anything behind me. It's being stopped by my face right here. And if you
yeah,
start to cue off axis, then the microphone is hearing across your face, and the sound doesn't sound like it's stopped and sourced from a hard surface. So there's different things acoustically that you're going to have to play with and figure out live, but that hopefully at least gives you some ideas of things to try.
that that's Awesome. Thanks for such a thorough answer. And I feel like this is why when people are listening, and this is why people start sweating with audio, and they're just being off by 3 millimeters change. Like you demonstrated very, very early in this, just, changes your voice a little bit,
Yeah.
or to a lot, depending on the microphone. There was something that Bandrew had popped in with, which I thought was really, really important, which it was in response to what you had said, Alan, about you have to know where you're actually going for first. Don't just start sweeping, which is why usually I try to, the way that I train people to hear treble frequencies other than listen and practice, it's kind of listen and practice, but it's more specific than that. It's before you engage the EQ, like decide or say out loud where you think the problem is, and then go for that and see if you were right, basically. See if it actually gets the thing that your intuition. And I help people to do that by saying, say out loud, what words would you use to describe what you're hearing? And I say, I give obvious words like boomy, dark, muddy, nasally, crisp,
That's why I said use the vocal cheat sheet, the vocal EQ cheat sheet. It's if you're very green, if you're not very experienced in EQ or something like that, then starting with something like that could help you to figure out what frequencies match those words.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a great starting point. I mean, it's
right. Exactly.
It's a starting point. It's by no means what you need to consider to be gospel.
And
but
nobody
gives you an idea of where to start.
Yeah. And nobody is born with the ability to do, like, this is just a skill. It's a skill that anybody can learn, hone, and develop to a certain extent. And it's
Curtis
really
Judd was born with it, just so you know.
Curtis Judd was born with it. So one person that we know was born with the skill for that, and one person was born with the world's most perfect voice, who we already mentioned.
Andrew.
And so that's right. So, okay, a few things to wrap up here. I saw that somebody was asking, let's see, this was off topic, but will I be doing an in-depth tutorial on the Waves Deep Breath plugin? Only because you're like the 80th person who's asked me this week. I mentioned that plugin in one of my audio critique videos, but I didn't teach it. I just said, here, I'm going to use this to help achieve. It was about somebody who, it was one of my subscribers. He does a podcast, but he, for medical reasons, from a surgery a long time ago, has a really wheezy breathing, and there's nothing he can do about that. And he was asking, how do I deal with this? There's nothing I can do. I got to deal with it in post. And I dealt with some EQ, and I also actually was having him back off the compression as opposed to what you would normally do, doing some manual automation. But of course, I went in there with Waves Deep Breath, and I said in that tutorial, or in that video, I said, listen, I can't teach this right now. This plugin, even though it only has like 5 controls, is phenomenally complicated and a little it's a little, I don't know, enigmatic in what the controls are called. Like, it's not obvious what those controls do. So I will have to think hard about how to teach that plugin. I'd rather not use a plugin for deep breath. I bought it. I didn't even own it. I bought it to use it for that video. I never use deep breath plugins. That was such a special case. I'd rather not. I'd rather do expanders almost every time for something like that. I'd rather use manual automation if it's not a 2-hour-long interview. But I don't know what your thoughts are on that. But
it's really funny. If you're talking about me professionally, I do things totally different. I always say, do what I say, don't do as I do, to my kids. But it's very much, I mean, I always say, the more natural a sound is, the better it is to capture. And then on my channel, then I compress the living tar out of it. Right now, I'm very compressed right now. I mean, it's because if I turn off the compressor, like right now, I'm backed away from the microphone. You're still hearing me just fine. If I move forward, you're still hearing me just fine. That's because it is used for a certain application. Same thing they do in radio. They back off the microphone because sitting there for 3 hours a day is very difficult sometimes.
Right.
And if you can back off a microphone and your voice still comes up, then that's a use of compression. But I mean, it's just, you got to understand, if there is an absolute need for something like a deep breath plugin, by all means use it. I used a de-esser for a while on my channel, but then I realized at some point, I go through my regular list of things, and I basically say, this is tuned the way I want it to be. engage, 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 engage. Does it sound good? Yeah, it sounds fine. And then I'll put it out there.
Yeah.
But then one day, like an idiot, I went through each of the settings just to see if I needed to tweak them. I'm like, crap, when did my de-esser go back to default settings? I didn't even notice. I'm like, all right, I'm going to disable the de-esser. And I'm like, okay, it's not that bad. So
Yeah.
I'm just gonna, as opposed to me having the wrong settings, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna, people naturally have sibilance in their voice. It wasn't like infomercial sibilance that is going to knock you out of the park. The reason why they do that, just so you know, if you're interested in knowing the reason why infomercials, is because what they do is they intentionally give a kill to the presence boost because they know that humans, when they pick up frequencies and sounds, you're hearing certain frequencies better than others. And if you pick up the middle of the A weighting curve frequencies, if you can spike those, it's going to be more difficult to ignore. So if you're brain dead and you're watching at 2 a.m. and you're like, what's this I'm watching here? And there's someone high energy and your brain can barely keep up with that. But it's the sound is shrill enough to keep you awake and alert. You're going to focus on that. So if you record an infomercial or you watch it not at 2 a.m., you're going to say, gosh, they sound terrible. All it is presence and hisses. Sound like you're interviewing a bunch of snakes. It's that bad because what they're doing is they're trying to keep you awake and get your brain just alert enough for you to make a bad decision, call them up, and buy whatever they're selling.
Yeah, and that's where understanding frequencies gets into the creative end of things. Once you really understand them, and I refer to it sometimes as an illusion. You can create illusions with audio.
You can.
Because one of the things that if you're a musician who's watching this, one of the things that they realized when the loudness, when finally someone won the loudness war and there was nowhere else to go, is and then they kept going, which is they realized that, if we're out of headroom, we're at 0, we can't go any louder, but we want to make it sound louder, we can boost at 5 to 8K, and that'll just make it feel like it's louder, even if it's not louder, because it's just spiking it right in your ear at the harshest frequencies. So,
and it's also easiest when you put power behind a speaker. It's also easiest to push those frequencies up higher than it is. It takes more bass to push the low. It takes more power to push the bass up to loud levels. In nightclubs, for example, they could easily put 15 to 20,000 watts in the low end, and they may be happy with only 250 or 300 watts in the mids and highs for the entire club. But granted, you want to feel that bass, thump, thump, thump. But at the same time, when you're on the actual dance floor listening, the mids and highs are going to travel so much better and different than the bass will. But you're still going to hear the bass halfway down the street. So,
okay, a couple just last few things before we take off. And I'm so pumped that there's so much going on in the comments section. Thank you, everybody, for being here and engaging. This
Kevin
is such
Basic filmmaker and Banju's here. And
yes,
those are some of the audio peoples. Kevin, to give you a real funny, we have Mike Delgadio is here. Holy crap.
Mike here?
Mike is here. We were talking about the voice of God himself, and there he is. He thought about me on a dance floor. You know what? You know what's funny is I'm the kind of guy that gets on there and I say, no, I don't like this. I don't like the beat matching. The DJ sucks. And I turn around and I stand around in the back. I'm like, and there was a club here in Masquerade that called Masquerade here in Atlanta. And I would get myself so disinterested that I would sometimes go and sit down on the speaker and I would doze off. I would doze off in a nightclub that's packed with people, because I was just so bored with the presentation in the show. That's how psycho I can be sometimes.
So this is great. Hey, Mike, we've never met formally, but I've commented on your channel many times. Obviously, huge fan. Who isn't? So awesome to see you here. Thanks so much for tuning in. Really appreciate it. And I think Banjo's going on about potato peelers, so that's where the comments is blowing up at the moment.
He's going off about something. Wait until he starts on the pizza.
Adam had asked, have you ever done sound for the Muppets or any puppet projects?
I have not, but I have video. I have, but I've talked to a lot of people that have. I have friends that have done the Muppet movies. I have friends that have done articles, and I've read a lot of articles. People cover them and that kind of thing. The closest I've done to that was I did a show, and there was a ventriloquist who had a ventriloquist dummy, and I was filling in for a couple of days for the boom operator, and he said, "Oh, and don't do like I did and cue the microphone to the puppet." I'm like, "You cued a microphone to the puppet?" And he's like, "I did because it was so real," and I was like, "Well, I'm not going to do that." and I
What's
didn't.
so funny about that? What's so funny about that is that I've heard people, I've known people who have said they made that mistake because
Yeah,
the illusion, when a great ventriloquist, they do it so
it does.
well,
Yeah,
but they're not
it's
actually
magic. Yeah,
throwing their voice. In case
yeah,
anybody doesn't know that, ventriloquists don't throw their voice. It's the fact that audio is visual, right? And that we understand, the example I always use is, if you've ever been in a pitch black, like a parking lot at night or something, and it's completely black and you hear a noise, you turn around over and over. You cannot tell where that sound is coming from if you don't have, unless there's something it's bouncing off of, right? That if you don't have some kind of a visual cue. And when really, really great ventriloquists do what they do and their lips are dead and this is moving, your brain just wants to hear sound where it thinks it's coming from.
well,
It's
sound
really
also
cool.
is tricksy. If you do a search on YouTube, once this video is done, not now, but if you do a search that's for sound illusion bar far, you're going to see that they have a split screen of someone who over and over again says bar or far, and it changes according to who you look at. And that's because part of the way that you perceive sound is in context. Part of it's in the visual of seeing, which is one of the reasons why masks are so much fun. You can't see visually what people are shaping their words to be. I did a whole video on how masks completely
It
have
was
screwed up
such a good
communication.
video, by the way.
So,
Everybody, it's one of my favorite videos you've ever put out. Everybody, what was it? What was it called? Or we'll leave a link somewhere in
I don't
the
know. It's like
description.
it's got a picture
It's
of me
about
wearing
why.
a Darth Vader mask.
Yeah, it's about why it's so hard to understand somebody through a mask, and it's partly what you would think and a lot of what you wouldn't think, and it's a really, really good, really good video. Yeah,
Thank you. But
yeah,
there's a lot of sound, and what you hear is visual. It's the
yeah,
reason why movies, if it doesn't sound good, it doesn't look good. Because if I
yeah.
do a punch to someone's head, one of the great examples was in the movie Quarantine. Somebody falls
Mm.
off of a top level in the hotel, hits a rail in the stairwell, and flies off, and it's this terrible bone smacking sound. You're like, yikes. But if you watch the behind the scenes, they show that what they did is they belayed it, and then they pulled a wire that threw somebody off at a different angle. When you watch it, you're like, oh yeah, that was fine. But when you hear it, you're like, yikes, that was terrible.
Wow.
Jeez, that was terrible. But that's the way that sound works, is it's an illusion in many cases in these movies. So it's really neat when you see how people were able to piece things together and how they use sound. And it really shows how sound is illusion, especially if you look at that bar far thing. You
Yeah.
can understand the science behind sound.
That's great, Adam. People on the news always hold up the microphone to the puppet. That's so funny. I'm sure it's just an instinct, but man, that's such a
And
goofy.
then they say, "Wow, you see, I actually picked him up though. It's because the puppet's right next to the person. It's a cardioid
Because
pattern."
they're on TV. They're right here.
Like,
Yeah,
they're doing back and forth, and it's like, well, the person sounds a little bit off axis when they're doing the voice of the puppet, but you know what? It's the voice of the puppet. It's going to sound ventriloquistic or whatever.
you know,
So it
I
doesn't matter.
I feel like the way, if you really wanted to do it, and maybe this has been done before, and I'm trying to remember. I think it was is it Mike Strassman, the ventriloquist from Australia? Strassman was his last name. Anyway, I think he did this once. He had these mechanical. He was a ventriloquist, brilliant, like technical proficient. And he would, at some point, get in a fight with the puppet. He would walk off stage as if he had a fight, storm off stage, and then the puppet was mechanical. It would come to life and continue
That's
on the show
clever.
without him. And I feel like, I don't think he did this, but I feel like if you really wanted to play with the illusion, you would leave the mic in front of the puppet and leave, and then use your own lav mic, or you could stand on the other side of the stage and have a lav hidden under your shirt or something like that
Yeah.
to keep the illusion going. Would be kind of fun. So we've obviously veered off into all kinds of different territories
That's
from where
what I do. I'm a master of misdirection. So I'm not even a
started.
magician here. I will distract you quicker than anything.
You did.
Kevin,
Well,
thank you for that. Understanding mass speech,
Yep, there it is.
sound speeds won't let him post a link.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah,
not
I'm
privileged
never
in that.
really sure what the link thing is with YouTube anymore. Let's not all
Yeah.
anger the YouTube algorithm.
Good times.
I have a colleague of mine who back in April had his YouTube channel of 12 years, basically beginning of YouTube, just vanish off the face of the earth, and had no idea why. He's a magician who'd been on Penn and Teller's Fool Us and all these millions of views that were all. It's how he ran his business, with people finding him on YouTube, and his
The best vanishing
entire
trick
channel.
ever.
Yeah, just 1,000 videos disappeared and you can't get to anybody. And he had to call in a favor with someone he knew that knew someone at YouTube, and eventually took like a month. He got his channel back. But you're just going, that isn't that like the thing that wakes you up at night when with some of the like, where we rely on, I have all my own websites, but still, even though I have all my own websites and my mailing, my email list and stuff, like if my YouTube channel just vanished, I'd really be in trouble for a little while.
You see, I would not be happy either. I have everything archived except probably the tags and the write-ups of what everything is. If my channel disappeared overnight, I would first of all be very, very angry and try to restore it and stuff like that too. But at the same time, I still teach in the real world. I still wouldn't stop what I do. I'd probably start up a SoundSpeeds 2 or something. Who knows? I could be, so angry by the whole thing that I'd say, you know what, I'm going to keep this thing. I'm going to keep producing content, even if there's nowhere to produce it. And then after a while, if I just could not get the channel back, I could just totally do something different. Who knows? Yeah. But I still teach sound in the real world. I still do what I do. I would be probably more often than not. I don't know what I do, man. It would really anger me. It would really anger me. I'd say, what did I do? I didn't do anything. It's not like the 7 non-broadcastable words are going to get you kicked off of a platform anymore. I know what words you can say that would, but
well, that was it. Is he didn't even know. They don't even tell you. Like he called me in a panic, and we were talking. He was like, dude, my channel's gone. And I said, why? He said, I don't know. There's no note with it. It doesn't even tell you like you used an unauthorized song. He's like, I didn't have any strikes on my channel. It ended up being just the algorithm just did the wrong thing.
Tools. You lose those tools. You can't see the strikes against you anymore when the channel's gone. You don't even have that to log into. It's like, well, the tools are all gone. Sorry, you just don't know. So it's like
let's bring this in, because I have a feeling we could do this for hours more. In fact, I'd like to do this again for hours more.
As a matter of fact, there's a joke that I started off with just Michael Wynn one night, and then Curtis jumped in the live stream, and after about half an hour, 45 minutes, Curtis joined us, and then after a while, invited Bandrew. We decided we was just open it up to everybody. And then Kevin, he was finishing up with what he jumped in the conversation. We started throwing out fun, sound related things to Kevin. And Kevin was like, I don't know what that is. Well, tell us what you think it is. And we talked for like 5.5 hours almost. And then, and then when we were done, Kevin and I were the only ones left over in the whole stream. So we went off the air and then talked another 2 hours. And it's because I got amped up on ZipViz. And so I was going to be up all night anyway.
Here's something. Okay. There's something for everybody to know. I'm going to have to look that up because I actually don't know about that. So here's an open. I'm going to say this just publicly because we've got all you guys in here. So Kevin's in here and Bandrew's been in here the whole time, which has been awesome. Mike, popped in here. Thanks so much. I don't think we saw Curtis, but who else? There's so many awesome folks that jumped in here. I would, love to jump on with all of you guys and have a big round table at some point if we find an appropriate topic. That would be very cool, because there's been such a good conversation. Actually, obviously, I would just want to learn from you guys. One of the things that I want to know, I need to figure out, and maybe this will be something you all can help me with, is I need to record an audiobook version of my first book, even though it's already been out for 2 years. I've been putting it off. And even though I live in a room full of microphones, I don't think I have a single mic that would be optimized for an audiobook. It would be the exact right mic for me for an audiobook. So maybe
you need $15,000 worth of gear and nothing less.
That's right. That's right.
That's what it is. The best microphones, the best system. That's the only way to do an audiobook in 2020.
Awesome. Well, I'll get on that. I think it's mostly just the noise floor. I feel like I don't have any mics that have that super noise floor rating, and I'd rather not have to go RX crazy before to process the whole thing. So even this one is I've got noise stuff going on right.
Andrew, oh man, that's funny.
I'm in. No, that's a terrible idea. That's a terrible idea. I'm finally happy I don't.
A channel would go away real fast.
Yeah,
that would be the reason why we do a live stream on that topic.
It's so good. So in any regard, any parting thoughts for the kind of reason we were here, which is so we know how
We've talked about 3 minutes of this entire live stream.
I know. we kind of okay. So we addressed. I guess I originally thought we were going to talk longer about it, but the bottom line is with
Evan, stay out
the
of that.
what is it? Oh
Look at
yeah,
Evan's comment.
32-bit float. It's so tempting.
Watch my video
So
on 32-bit
tempting.
floating point. You don't want. He's poking
So
the bear.
just get your levels right. All right. So what was I going to say? Oh, if we talked. I thought we were going to talk more about the individual test, sensitivity, rejection, sound quality, and we didn't mostly because
stay on topic when you have me on your channel. No,
mostly we didn't because
we'll talk about make pudding or something. I don't know. We'll talk about everything else except the topic.
Simply the tests that were being done in the wrong environment that it almost didn't matter, and so that was kind of the point. So do you have any parting thoughts for folks here in like 1 minute or less, kind of for like what or 2 minutes or less for if they're trying to buy a mic and apart from listening to a bunch of different voices on the same mic, if they're trying to buy one, or if they've bought the one they think they want but now they need to evaluate it and decide if it is right for them or they're going to return it, what should they be doing?
Well, first of all, I guess you could say, what application are you buying a microphone for? If you're buying it for your voice, for example, you want to get one that's going to pick those frequencies up well. If you have a kick drum or a snare drum, that's going to be a different microphone most likely than what you're going to use on a voice. There are some circumstances where a flat microphone is going to be ideal. There are some situations when you're going to want one that has some character and adds something to it. And that coloration, though, some people were like, no, I don't like colored microphones. I'd rather it be flat, or I'd rather it just be neutral. And you know what? That's all personal preference, and that's fine. The big thing I usually do whenever I sit down and start playing with a microphone or start to really review it or something like that, is I ask myself, what is this microphone's purpose, and does it do that well? I listen to it and I say, if it's a flat microphone, is it flat? Does it do that job well? If it is something that's supposed to be adding a certain character to it, if it has a certain sound to it, there are some that if you look at the frequency response, it's up and down all over the place. And you may say, that's going to not sound good. You listen to it and you're like, wow, that actually sounds better than I thought it would. But the thing that you run into a lot online is people giving the same opinions over and over again. You'll hear people. This is one of the reasons why I really appreciate channels like Bandrew that he's not afraid to go against the norm. He'll take a little bit longer to get a video out there because he does stellar reviews, but you'll see a bunch of people, this microphone is so good, this microphone is great, and then he gets on there and says, you know what, it's okay, but it's got a few issues. And then all of a sudden after he does that, you'll start to see, well, yes, this is this and this. And that's when people will start to follow him. And they'll start to say, well, Andrew said this. And then they'll say, well, you didn't mention that in this video, and that kind of thing too. I think a lot of us have had that happen where when you give it a real good listen, you're like, you know what? I'm not as thrilled as I thought I would be.
I just want to jump in real quick on that because somebody earlier asked about the Rode Wireless Go when somebody else was asking about wireless mics, and Rode sent that to me for free earlier this year to review, and I was very excited because it looked awesome and people were raving about it, and I was making the video expecting to rave about it, and it sounded like garbage. It sounded like crap, and God, I'm grateful. Rode has sent me products that are amazing, that I raved about, that I use all the time. Yeah. And I felt like I had an obligation to say, this doesn't sound good, even if it pisses off Rode, even though they sent it to me for free. And I did. And I said it in different words than this sounds like crap. What I said is, this is not as good as it should sound for the price. and a lot of times I don't have to say much. I actually do a lot of blind audio comparisons on my channel. It's one of the things I've always done. And I just go, here, A and B. I'm going to do a bunch of tests, A or B, write down before I tell you what they were, which one you thought sounded better. And almost so often, people are blown away. They end up choosing a cheaper mic, a third-party mic, a mic not from a brand that they liked, that they thought they liked. And the Rode Wireless Go serves a function, for sure, for YouTubers, especially if you're like running gun vlogging with a filmmaker or something.
20
you just
feet away from a camera, sure.
20, exactly. But for the average person that's doing talking head in a home, whatever, I was like, man, this does not sound anywhere near good enough to justify this. Yeah. So anyway, just to your point.
But when you have to look at different aspects, what are you using a microphone for also? Right. I have so many times tried replacing this microphone right here, This is a T-Bone SC400. It is a microphone that you can buy in the UK for 40 pounds.
Yeah.
You can get it, by the time the shipping costs and everything to America. But you know what? I've replaced this with a King B. I have replaced this with the NT1. I've replaced this with shotgun microphones. I've replaced this with a lot of different things, listened to them, and then shook my head and said, no, I'm going to have to go back to it. Because I do not like to have a microphone right in my face. Like you have a microphone right in front of you. That's fine. Maybe it's the boom operator in me that doesn't like to have a microphone in the frame. I don't know what it is. But what I do know is I don't like having a microphone in front of my face when I speak. You see, I talk with my hands a lot. I'm not Italian, but I talk with my hands anyway. And I might hit the microphone occasionally, but now I know where the thing is and I try to steer clear of it. But the thing is, what I need to do with the microphone is make sure this thing picks me up well at a little bit of a distance off the mic. If I got all the way up on this thing, you'd say, that's not what you should be doing with your voice. Yeah. But I don't use it there. I use it farther away. I mean, it's off of my mouth, probably 10, 12 feet or 12 inches, but it's also cued off of my screen here. And it's cued within this background. So that way it's using it correctly. When I've tried other microphones coming up from here in front of me, all around me, I don't get the results I'm looking for. And I prefer to have something that sounds, I mean, I could sound, insane if I boosted the bass and started playing with EQ and stuff. Like even if right now in this thing, if I started to mess a little bit with the highs, and started to add what they couldn't consider the enhancer, I could make it sound really, really shrill and infomercially. Yeah. I could try to emulate the whole Mike Dog audio sound. This thing does not sound like that. I don't sound like that. I can't, I don't have the voice of God that he does. And so what I do is I run everything flat. I just use compression. I use a noise gate and stuff like that. But I like what this gives me characteristically for my purposes. When I do a Skype call, when I do Discord, when I do a live stream like this, it sounds fine for me and serves the purpose. If I back off on the microphone a little bit, you hear the creaking of my chair, but it brings my voice right up. It works well for this application. And that's part of what you have to understand is what sound do you want for the application and find something that fits that purpose.
Kevin's playing us off right now. he's playing us off the stage right now.
If it looks good, camera light, sound good, Mike, then you're done.
You're done, like both of you right now. I think that's our cue to be.
Hold on one second. I gotta say one little thing here. You want to know the way that I look best on camera?
How do you look best?
Like that, when you don't have to see me.
Oh, there you go.
There you go. When you don't have to see me, that's when I sound most intelligent. That's one of the funny things is about sound. Here's one of the things that's really interesting. When you had Richard Nixon years and years ago, when he was running for president, he ran against, I think it was Richard Nixon against JFK, right?
Yep.
And I'm remembering this, and I think that's what it was. And people looked at it, and Richard Nixon, if he was on the radio, he scored very, very high because people said he sounds older, more experienced, and distinguished. And Kennedy sounded young and like, okay. But when you saw him on screen, Richard Nixon looked like he was going to have a stroke and die. Yeah. But Kennedy looked young and handsome and stuff. And so he got a lot. But that's the thing. Visually, we are very much visual and audio oriented. So if you're just concentrating on the picture and not hearing the sound, you're going to have one feeling and emotion. You're going to have one experience. If you're just listening to the sound, it's completely different. That's one of the reasons why whenever I'm on set, and some of you will appreciate this if you're on set, you'll appreciate this. If a director of photography asks to have a set of headphones, give it to them because they're responsible for picture. And if they listen to it as well, they're going to be brought into the whole experience. And that's when they're going to be able to not just hear what's going on and the struggles that you're going through. They might make some adjustments for you if they say, yeah, you're sounding a little bit weird. And that's one of the things that when a DP is just concentrating on their picture and not listening at the same time, they're more likely to also talk to other people. Yeah, you see this? Let's tweak this light over there. And you're going to be hearing them talk through the take. You're going to be hearing a lot of different aspects. If they ask for headphones, though, that means they're dialed on the whole experience. And they're most likely going to be very team-oriented at that point. I love that.
Well, that's great. Listen, Alan, I got your YouTube channel up there. I'm sure basically at this point everybody knows. I know you said you don't have any upcoming classes or anything. I know you do from time to time, so everybody can look out for that. You make custom high-end XLR cables as well, right? Do I have that right?
I do. I actually have 2 orders right now I need to do, and I'll probably
Cool.
finally get to those during the Christmas break. But
Yeah.
I do various different things. I have a sound utility class that I don't advertise or anything like that, but it went like 5 hours long. So if you're interested in that, shoot me an email and you can get that. But I don't have it. I think it's on my website, soundspeeds.us,
Okay.
that you can look at it up there. I think.
Great.
I'm terrible about self promotion. I really am.
That's why I'm helping
yeah,
you,
but
because you didn't want to.
But
I'm not terrible about self promotion.
I'm also I'm also one of those people that very much blabs and just talks. If you catch me in a live stream, you can probably have me teach an entire class just because you ask me one question and I'll spill my entire brain into the stream. There have been many times that I've talked about things before on my channel, and I completely get myself totally distracted, and I will suddenly say I'm supposed to be doing this, but I'm not. And yeah, you see a few people in here. You see quite a few
Kevin's
people
there.
in here that
Kevin's
are
there, yeah.
using cables that I've made.
Yeah.
When Mike redid his entire booth at one point, he and I talked. He was talking to me about some issues he was having, and I made him some cables. Kevin, he was having an issue, and I reached out to him and sent him one of my cables. Bandrew, he uses some of mine. Curtis has some of mine. I mean, there's a whole bunch of people that have bought cables that I was making when I wasn't working in the film industry because of the shutdowns. I'm non-essential. Actually, what's funny is California now has acknowledged that film people are essential. And you may laugh at that and say, why would you do that? Oh, it's because it's California. No, it's because when everyone is at home during a shutdown and they're not doing anything, they're doing one of two things. They're either gaming or they're watching movies and television shows. So tell me that film people are not essential.
Exactly. Well, listen, this is awesome. I'm so thrilled that we've been able to do this. I think I'm gonna head off now and relieve my wife. I think she said she's gonna be baking some Christmas cookies, and so I'll watch the infant while she bakes cookies, and that's a win-win for everybody, I think.
It is.
So
absolutely.
there we go.
Plus, making the wife is very happy as well.
Always. So listen, thank you so much for making time on the weekend to do this. I had such a good time. I hope everybody really enjoyed the conversation. I look forward to seeing any of you around any of our channels and continuing the audio education, as it were. Safe and happy holidays. Wear a mask. Stay safe. Please stay safe, everybody.
I've just infected everybody by speaking without a mask on for the past hour and a half. Sorry.
Adam says, keep going. No, Adam and I have known each other for 20 years. No, thank you, Adam. I can't do that right now. All right. Thanks so much, Kevin.
So we have that is a mask related. It's not a mask at all, but I'll at least do this. Where did the thing go? I just pulled it across. Oh, there it is. I will put a sock over my face and do that. And now you're hearing the mass speech and stuff. Kevin posted the thing before that says, mass speech, understanding mass speech. That's the video to watch on why it's so difficult to hear people through a mask.
Awesome. Everybody will go check that out. And look at all this coming in right here. Bought a bunch of cables from Alan. All the cables in my videos are Alan's. They're really good. And they want to know where to order those cables.
Just sound speeds. Just go to my channel, shoot me an email, either soundspeeds@yahoo.com or send me an email at alan@soundspeeds.us, either one of those. And, I'll gladly, I'll hook you up since I got to make some cables over the holidays anyway. I'll do it. Sure.
You see that, Dominic? It's a pain, but he'll do it for you. All right.
It's one of the things I perfected in my mind. I've done the way that I like them to be over the years. I make them and they work just fine, so I never have to replace them. And so I don't do them very often. But I was doing it during the shutdown because, hey, what else am I going to do? Might as well make a little bit of bank on the side here by making cables. So
may as well. All right, man. I'm going to let you get back to your weekend.
Discord. You can contact me that way as well.
Oh, on the Discord as well. Awesome. See, you're good at self-promotion. There it is. All right, everybody. Thanks so much, and have a great day.